Hey, what's going on everybody? So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the original Star Wars trilogy and if it would hold up in today's cinema atmosphere. But before we really get into this video, I just want to say that I post videos on this channel almost every single day. So if you want daily Star Wars content, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. But now let's get into the original trilogy. So I am a very big fan of the original trilogy. I'm not the biggest fan of Return of the Jedi up until the end. It just feels extremely boring until the final confrontation with Vader and Luke. And I don't really have anything against the Ewoks themselves, but that whole plotline, nature against the technology stuff, it's just super boring to me. But other than that, I'm a huge fan of the original trilogy, even though I grew up with the prequels. So to really see the progression of cinema between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, first we're going to compare the originals to the prequels. So obviously, even though they don't hold up today, the visual effects in the prequels were very good compared to the original trilogy. But we're really going to focus on story in this video and not the visual effects and the technology that was available for the time. First, we're going to compare the villains in the prequels versus the originals. So when we first see Darth Maul, we think he is going to be the new Vader because he is cool, he barely talks, and he looks very menacing just like Vader. And I'm really not trying to throw any shade here, but the people that said that Maul was going to be like Vader aren't necessarily wrong because he had just about as much character development as Vader did. All we really got with Vader up until the very end of the original trilogy was him looking cool and choking people with the Force. And that really worked for 1977. He was really scary and cool looking, but other than that, the character had no depth to it, and it made Vader's redemption feel very abrupt to the audience. It would feel pretty much the same if we found out that Darth Maul had a kid and he all of a sudden turned to the light side because of that kid. Really, the only difference is Vader was a Jedi in the past, so I will give him that. But the fact that Darth Maul wasn't even a major villain in the prequels and he's still comparable to Vader is an attest to how far cinema came in the time period between the two trilogies. Even in 1999, when The Phantom Menace came out, Vader would not be an acceptable main villain. In the prequels, we see a clear growth in Palpatine's character into becoming the Emperor, and they even hinted at some behind-the-scenes developments like him killing his master. So in conclusion, Vader does not hold up against Palpatine from the prequels as the main villain of a series. And now we're going to compare the heroes of the two trilogies. It's really tough to compare the heroes of the two trilogies because in the prequels there's not really any heroes. The bad guys are everywhere. Even the Jedi have become corrupt, and the only true Jedi that we learn about in the movies is Qui-Gon Jinn. But with all that being said, I feel like in 1977 the hero's journey had been pretty well thought out already and pretty advanced, so I think it definitely would have held up in 1999 or 2005. Now we're going to move on to the secondary characters or the supporting characters, and I actually feel like the originals would hold up against the prequels in this category. In the originals, you have Obi-Wan, Yoda, Han, and Leia. You could argue that Han and Leia are main characters, but they are technically side characters because Luke is the main character. In the prequels, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan was amazing, but other than that, the side characters were pretty weak. Padme is just a vessel for Anakin's children. Qui-Gon dies in the first movie. Hopefully you've seen the movie. If not, that's a big spoiler and I'm very sorry. But then you have all the other Jedi in the Jedi Council, and most of them are just boring monks with no personality. Now for overall scale and world building, I think the prequels are miles ahead. The expansion of the Star Wars lore is also in the prequels' favor, but that has less to do about the filmmaking and more to do with the fans just falling in love with lore and wanting more and more. But that still doesn't change the fact that the world building in the prequels as well as the expansion of the lore is much better. And now we're going to move on to the original trilogy versus the sequel trilogy. This is a very rough subject because objectively the sequel trilogy is just a better set of films than the originals. A lot of the older fans try to argue that, but against the sequels, the original trilogy doesn't hold up at all. Let's start off by comparing the villains of the two trilogies. So Kylo Ren versus Vader. I actually did an entire video on that, so go check that out if you want, but Kylo Ren has so much more character development than Vader does. What really sets them apart is we see Kylo develop on his own away from the heroes. We never really see this with Vader. The only time we get character development with him is when he has conversations with Luke. They make it very obvious that Kylo and Snoke have a very abusive relationship, and we can see that Kylo is being torn apart between the light side and the dark side of the Force as well. And we get all of that information plus a lot more without any dialogue between him and the main heroes of the movies. And now we're going to move on to the heroes. The heroes share pretty much the same hero's journey between the originals and the sequels. The hero's journey is a very basic concept in film, and it really hasn't changed all that much through the years. The main thing that changes though is the hero's character development. Over time, audiences need heroes to have more and more layers in order for them to be actually interested in the character. So while their journeys are very similar, the only difference is Rey is much more developed as a character. As soon as we meet Rey, we know that she had a very traumatic past and that it's a mystery to us and her. So right off the bat, that's layers to a character that Luke didn't have. As soon as we meet Luke, we learn pretty much all we need to know about him very fast. And then after we initially learn about Luke, there's no mystery behind him, all the way until the I am your father twist. Also in The Force Awakens, two separate characters are set up to be heroes as well, with Finn and Rey both developing as characters much more than Luke ever did. Even though by the end of the trilogy he is a secondary character, Finn is way more interesting of a character than anyone in the original trilogy. We never saw anything like a defected stormtrooper joining the other side died in the original trilogy, and it was extremely cool to see and immediately gives the character so many layers. And then there's the secondary characters, but the sequel trilogy kind of cheats in this category. It's tough to beat Han Solo and Leia, but they are in both trilogies. And I have to be objective for this video, so when you have Han and Leia in one trilogy, but then you also add Finn and Poe in the other trilogy in addition to Han and Leia, it just makes the sequel trilogy much better than the originals. And now onto the world building. I don't think that the world building in the sequels was as good as the prequels, but it may be on par with the originals. The expansion of the lore, and especially the expansion of the Force, is miles ahead of the originals in the sequels as well. We see new Force powers, we see the mind connection between Rey and Kylo, we see the dyad, we see all kind of new stuff. So with all this being said, the originals don't stand up to the sequels or prequels, and they would not be accepted in today's atmosphere. As I said, I love the originals to death, but if they came out today, they would be torn apart. And for the record, I'm not basing this at all off visual effects, I'm strictly going off storytelling. And as I always say, all film is subjective, but the originals are objectively worse than the sequel trilogy. To me, all Star Wars movies are good, it's just a matter of the time in which they came out. In 1977, A New Hope was mind-blowing, but if that same movie came out in 2020, it would be considered an awful movie. But there are really no movies that came out that long ago that if they came out today, they would be considered a great movie. And that just really shows how far film has come in that time period. So while the originals would not hold up today, that's more of a testament to how far filmmaking has come than a testament to the originals being bad. And even though they don't hold up, I still love them and I always will. And this video should not change your mind on how you feel about the movies either way. But let me know what you guys think of this video, and let me know if you think the original trilogy would hold up in today's film atmosphere. And remember, if you want daily Star Wars content, I do post on this channel almost every day, so make sure you subscribe to the channel if that's what you're looking for. Thank you so much for watching, and as I said before, all film is subjective, and I hope that this doesn't make you too angry if you love the originals, because I also love the originals. But once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you on the next one.